World almost accepted Israel will everyday kill the civilian Palestinian people, unarmed women and children. But when Israel motivatedly killed journalists, we have to talk, we have to speak and we have to protest. Ladies and gentlemen, an Israeli strike hit Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, killing at least 20 people, including 5 journalists from major outlets like Reuters and Associated Press. Israel has ordered an inquiry and expressed regret over civilian deaths. These are eyewashed, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome all of you inside the country and around the globe at International Affairs program in SATV. My name is Rashid Kanchan. I will be your host. I have a very terrific panel today. I have Brigadier General Shafat, very experienced, very respected personality. I have Professor M. Shahiduzzaman, very outspoken on foreign affairs and foreign issues. We have in studio our international affairs specialist Shamsul Alam Pantho, and from Washington we have Norman Floyd Barnes. He will join from Washington, and from Salt Lake City, Utah, Scott L. Leckman. He will join from Utah. All of you, welcome to SATV's show. Let me begin with Shamsul Alam Pantho, because we need to know some other breaking news right this moment popping up in the international media, sir.
Thank you so much. A very good afternoon to our esteemed panelists and also our connections through Zoom. Very good afternoon to our viewers. Let me begin here. You mentioned the Israeli airstrike taking the lives of journalists in Gaza. Of course, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has already condemned this latest attack on the Nasser Hospital, which is located in southern Gaza Strip. And of course, there is a rift between, a very recent rift between Australia and Iran. Australia on Tuesday, meaning today, has expelled the Iranian ambassador and suspended diplomatic operations in Tehran. And Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has also announced to designate Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. And of course, there is a breaking news from America. Donald Trump has announced Monday that he's had removed Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook from her position, citing allegations of mortgage fraud.
Yes, sir. That's the breaking news right this moment, ladies and gentlemen. President Trump's special envoy, Keith Kellogg, is in Kiev working toward ending the war with plans for a peace summit involving Trump, Putin and Zelensky. Though Russia shows reluctance, Ukraine is also seeking to secure at least $1 billion per month from United States as arms aid, with Norway offering a strong support for air defense systems. Let me begin from Scott L. Leckman from Salt Lake City, Utah. Gentlemen, welcome to SATV's show. My first question would be to you. What progress has been made in the latest diplomatic efforts to end the Russian-Ukraine war, and how realistic is a Trump-Putin-Zelensky summit, sir?
Well, I'm afraid that not much ground has been made. Trump met with Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, and before the meeting, he wanted a ceasefire, and if he didn't get one, there would be severe consequences. And following that meeting, neither happened. He then met with Zelensky and European leaders, and they wanted to make sure that any deals would include the president of Ukraine, and that they needed to have security guarantees because the Europeans don't trust Putin. And then on Sunday, in the U.S. media, the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, said there's no planned meeting and that they would not agree to have NATO troops in Ukraine. So I'm afraid that we're back to square one.
All right, Professor Scott L. Leckman, I want to get the different opinion from Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, because you keenly covered the White House Senate, Congress and Oval Office, left wing, right wing. So what news you have? Are you in the same opinion with the Scott Lekman says?
Yes, I am. Good morning from Washington, D.C. to everyone. Yes, the situation is still in a stalemate. The Kremlin has indicated that they have no desire to move towards a peace conversation. I'm not even talking about a deal, a conversation. They are hell bent on moving towards conquering and taking over Ukraine. Obviously, you're watching the news that they are very hesitant. They are basically have their own agenda, and right now everything is at a standstill.
So this is the development. Let me ask to a general, retired general who has the military background, sir. What role is NATO playing in the current phase of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and how does it plan to address Russian drone and missile attacks? Because negotiation talks is going on, plans are going on, but attack is also going on.
I think this has become a peculiar war. Nobody is trying to move away from their aim or goals that want to achieve. Russia has set certain conditions, and Russia will probably not budge from their point of view, because they understand that Europe is fully dependent on USA most probably now. So, and USA also cannot really come with the full power to help Ukraine. So, Russia is taking advantage of that situation. And Zelensky, first of all, how far can the Europeans continue to help Ukraine is a big question. How much can USA support Ukraine? There's a big question, because at the end of the day, the USA has to decide that they have Israel in one hand, they have Ukraine, and they are probably going to get involved in some other places also. So, how many places will they be able to contain, and how will they control all these things? This is a big question, as they said, because we are back to square one.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Sir, there is some other questions has raised. I must go to a professor who is extremely specialized on this particular. How significant, sir, is Ukraine's demand for $1 billion monthly US aid, and they want commitment, Ukraine want commitment for sustaining its defense against Russia. If peace talks get the good results, why they need arms again?
Well, I would tend to sort of disagree with the pessimistic conclusions drawn by our two friends in the United States. I don't think that President Trump had invested so much time and energy in Alaska to see it all going in vain. I mean, the way he conducted himself with President Putin, there was a great change of their attitude to each other. It almost seems to me that except for the territorial question on the east, the areas now controlled by Russia, other than that, I don't see any major problem. And the $1 billion that Zelensky has asked for would be necessary for the reconstruction, post-war reconstruction, and also for security. Obviously, I don't think President Trump would be very interested to take Ukraine in the NATO. Neither would Russia allow that. And I think that's also one reason why the Ukrainian president has sought guarantees, security guarantees from the United States on territorial sovereignty. And I think that eventually Trump and President Putin would work out such guarantees between the two of them. Russia has very serious needs to go into this a post-war reality of redevelopment. I don't think the European powers are very eager to see this war continue any further, because the only thing that would happen is lead to a stalemate, and it simply will ruin the Western economies, West Europe's economies. So my hunch is that when Zelensky goes over to Moscow to meet Putin, he is not going to be aggressive. He is going to be very loyal to Trump, and Trump would probably advise him to accept all the terms set by President Putin, because other than that, the other option is absolutely suicidal. I don't think Trump wants the war to continue. I don't think Putin would like to see anything less than a face-saving compromise. And worst of all, Zelensky is the last person who can afford to continue a war where there is so little support within Ukraine, given the level of destruction
Right, sir.
and calamity that has already occurred. The rest of the world are absolutely eager to see Ukraine return to its agricultural capabilities, its exports across the world, and that is exactly what President Trump, who is eager for a Nobel Peace Prize,
Yes, sir.
that's what he will want.
Very articulated explanation, I think, gentleman from Utah, Professor Scott Lekman, who is also in the advisory committee chairman of USGLC, United States Global Leadership Coalition. Professor, you are hearing the articulated response from two of the very high voltage panelists of our country, Professor Shahiduzzaman and General Shafat Ahmed. Do you agree, or what is your opinion on this, or do you have any counter opinion, Professor Scott Lekman?
Well, Putin seems to be in the driver's seat. He seems unhurried to reach an agreement, even though he's lost huge number of casualties. That does not seem to bother him. So he does not seem to be in a hurry. He does want to string Trump along so that Trump thinks he's serious. Zelensky, on the other hand, seems eager to end this war, which puts him at a disadvantage. Now, the Europeans, this is a big threat to them, because how this war ends is going to mean a lot to the Europeans. So, again, Zelensky wants to make sure that Trump thinks that he wants to come to the table, wants an agreement. But I think that is the dynamic at the moment.
All right, sir. Mr. Norman, may I know one thing? Is it the Trump's final trump card to weaken the NATO and to show the world that there is one man, Donald Trump, can do everything? Mr. Norman.
The situation is that you have two world leaders. You have Putin, you have Trump. However, they have governments. You have Russian Federation, you have the U.S. government here, and everybody wants to end the war. However, what conditions is this? They have to deal with the conditions of what's going on, the security measures, NATO, territory. What? Russia do not want to give up the land they have. Okay? We want to end the war because we have other things to do. And we also have commitments to Ukraine and also to NATO. At the same time, we want to have a situation where we can prosper as a country and as a nation in terms of dealing with world trade. The other stuff that's going on besides the war. The war is just an indication of a more serious problem. We have economic problems, we have trade and commerce, we have things that need to be done. So this situation is basically stagnating the flow of the world, what's going on. So it's in the opinion that Trump is trying to make a deal for his long-term objective, is to enhance the prosperity of this country. So having this war continue is not to his benefits. It's not to the overall objective of what's going on. So he has to be very sensitive on both ends. Yes, I'm supporting Ukraine, but also I want to make a deal with Russia and other parts of the world so we can move on and get things going on. So right now, the stagnation is basically is the terms and what's going on and how we're going to deal with this, and at the same time appease the governments and the people so they'll be satisfied.
Fair enough, Norman, from your side, but I need to ask a little bit tricky question to our international affairs specialist. You see, Trump is playing his trump card. Putin is reluctant. Zelensky is looking for money and arms, military aid. What do you see the end of this negotiation process?
Thanks for your question. Let me just put onto the table here that Donald Trump initially wanted a bilateral meeting between Ukraine and Russia before he can initiate a trilateral meeting. Of course, this is just a screenplay to some extent for world leaders to understand what are the give and takes, where will the sacrifices be, and where will the how each side is going to benefit from coming to a dialogue. That is where the current issue stands. But as you mentioned, Donald Trump and his trump card, there is an issue I want to bring out for our Zoom guests. Of course, there's a feud going on between President Donald Trump and Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Is of course related to having the National Guard being deployed first in D.C. and of course in Chicago. Just want to get my comment from Norman Floyd Barnes, if you would allow. There is something that is going on inside America, and of course Donald Trump is getting into a feud with other governors in other states. Just want to know how Norman Floyd Barnes feels about this kind of issue.
Norman.
Yes. My opinion, my response, my insight on the situation. President Trump is a long-term foe with the governor of Illinois. They are mortal enemies. The governor is a potential candidate for the president's position, the next presidential term. Also, Governor Newsom is also a candidate. As you notice, these cities has been singled out and targeted for military intervention, crime. There's high crime, so the president wants to put together this task. Actually, he has put together a task force to respond to these cities, to put together a military suppression of crime, supposedly crime in these cities. And it's ironic that these cities are that he wants to address his political foes. So we have a fight going on. There's a lot of tension and stress going on. And we may end up seeing this in the Supreme Court. Matter of fact, I can almost guarantee you this stuff is going to happen in the Supreme Court if military troops are put into Chicago and other cities like Baltimore.
All right, sir. I have a news that Russian forces launched drone and shelling attacks across Donetsk and Kherson regions, causing casualties and underscoring renewed hostilities despite diplomatic overtures. Sir, Brigadier General Shafat, I just want to know that President Putin is reluctant, news says, but he is continuously attacking on civilian areas.
You see, one thing to understand, Russia will not let Ukraine remain in calm or peace unless they come to their terms, because from time to time he will keep on hitting the targets. Because Zelensky thought that probably with the help of European Union, NATO and US help, he will be able to win over the situation, that he could not. And as far as Putin is concerned, he is sure, he is confirmed in his mind that at the end it is going to be the Russian victory, because he is going to get all the things that he is asking. As you said, probably Trump is asking his envoy to go to Kiev and so that they can work out a deal, and deal is on the terms of conditions given by Putin. So Putin will keep the pressure on till they reach a solution on the terms of Putin.
Sir, let me get the proper answer, one proper answer on one term I just learned this morning. backdoor negotiation or backdoor diplomacy? You are expert on that. Sir, would you please say, is this peace negotiation is a backdoor negotiation? Who is winning? Who is losing?
Actually, whenever you have negotiations to end a war or to have a ceasefire, the backdoor negotiations are an integral part of it. Most of the negotiations that involve eventually long-term solutions involve quiet diplomacy, which is sort of totally devoid of any exposure to the media. So, this backdoor diplomacy in this case would imply that President Putin would be persuaded, I won't use the word forced, persuaded to allow Zelensky a face-saving retreat. You know, American policy has always been, while dealing with Russians, that, or even in other countries, that the Americans give you enough rope so that you can withdraw with some semblance of prestige. Here, I would say that Putin, the professor from Utah had suggested that Putin is not in a hurry. I don't know, it makes me very confused. How can I agree with him? Putin faces sanctions. He has been facing a terrible economic pressure. He has turned the economy into a war economy, and this is perhaps the golden opportunity. He would never ever get a chance to end the war in such a gorgeous manner, seeing him victorious as he can today. So, I'd say that if he is not in a hurry, he is not in any complacent situation either. He would like to see the war end on his terms, and President Trump, who is eager to maintain a very promising future relationship with Putin in order to earn a Nobel Prize, would like to see that Putin also gives enough leverage to Zelensky so that Zelensky can survive politically. I think what Zelensky will lose, as my brother here, the Brigadier Shahab, has said, are some of the lands that Putin has occupied. But those are valuable agricultural lands, and they also consist a lot of prospects for minerals. But unfortunately, that would be the price to pay. And in fact, I would believe that the outcome of a Zelensky-Putin negotiation would be,
right,
if Zelensky can sort of beg, I would use the
right,
word beg Putin,
right,
to minimize the level of his conquest.
Thank you. Professor Scott Leckman, the Professor Shahiduzzaman has used one word, beg. Putin clearly says to the media, even to the President of Donald Trump, that his condition has to met. He has given 4 conditions. Land has to be occupied, has been occupied by Russia, has to be acknowledged. Sanctions has to be withdrawn. Ukraine cannot see the ambition to go for the NATO, and some other conditions he has given. He says condition has to met. Do you think, Professor Leckman, that Donald Trump's negotiation is weakening NATO and Ukraine itself and putting Ukraine into a losing position? Professor Leckman.
Well, I think the NATO countries have a vital interest in what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, it's happening on their back door. And, the way this conflict ends has repercussions throughout Europe. So they have vested interest in this outcome. And they don't want to have to go through this every couple of years. So they need the security guarantees. And this is going to be a sticking point with any negotiations. So, the NATO countries are stepping up. They're increasing the amount of defense spending in these countries. And, last thing I heard is Trump wants to sell the arms to the Europeans, and then they will give it to the Ukrainians. Norway just announced that they'll help Germany in supplying two Patriot missile defense systems to Ukraine. So I think Europe is united, and they want a realistic outcome here.
All right, Professor Scott Leckman, let me get a news reaction from Norman. As you are in Washington, you have latest news, I think. Pentagon is blocking the Ukrainian missile systems supported by Pentagon itself. So, do you think that Pentagon is trying to control Volodymyr Zelensky to stop retaliation to Russia? Mr. Norman.
My opinion is that these missiles, the delay in release and use of these missiles is part of the negotiation terms. They do not, the Pentagon is trying through the Trump administration, they do not want to give the illusion that we are against what is going to happen in terms of the peace negotiation. By delivering the missiles, it means that Ukraine has the ability to continue the war. They can be able to strike deep inside of Russia. So they do not want to instigate any more tension than what's going on. So the delay is part of the negotiation part. So they will give the impression to Putin that we are trying to work this thing out.
Sir, allow me to go for a breaking news. Allow me to go for a breaking news. It's a huge breaking news popping up in almost all international medias. In the ongoing Ukraine conflict, Trump declared that Vladimir Putin refuses to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky, citing personal anonymity. And meanwhile, Senator Marco Rubio engaged with European officials to explore diplomatic avenues to end the war. I must go to Professor Shahiduzzaman. Sir, what a development.
I think this is surprising as much as it is. I would have thought that Putin would be interested to meet. Perhaps my hunch is that Zelensky has displayed a lot of reluctance to meet Putin's term. It's quite possible that Zelensky may have been persuaded by the European countries especially not to give in to Putin's pressure. And as you had said right at the beginning of the program that President Trump had asked Zelensky to accept all of Putin's terms. This is where I think there is this snag. I think Putin perhaps gives him a low-key treatment, treats him cheaply, and in fact from the very beginning Putin had really shown a lot of indignation towards Zelensky.
Sir.
Perhaps it's just a temporary diplomatic ploy,
Sir,
I would think.
As the panelists from United States, from Utah and from Washington, both of them have the time limitations because in Eastern Standard Time at Washington it is 4 a.m. in the morning and Utah it is 2 a.m. in the morning. I really appreciate, gentlemen. I just want to get the reaction from Professor Scott Leckman. He is a very famous American activist. He is a professor and he is the committee chairman of ULSGC. Sir, what a turning point of Vladimir Putin. Do you think ball is in Putin's court right now in this perspective?
Yes, I do think so. Now, how will Trump respond? The Senate has additional sanctions already geared up and ready to pass. They're just waiting for Trump's okay. So that may be on the horizon. Time will tell.
All right, Norman, what is your impression? Because your president is going to face a sort of diplomatic battle losing with Putin. Putin is a very smart guy.
Yes, basically, as I mentioned before, the Kremlin and Putin has talked about this. They was reluctant to the point, and they basically conveyed to the president Putin that we do not want this. So that is what's happening. there's basically decided they want to continue with their demands and their conditions, and that's it.
What took place in Alaska, Scott Lakeman, in that place also Putin dominated, Putin dominance, Putin influence on Donald Trump is very much clear to the global people around the globe.
Yes, Trump has quite an affinity to Putin and to Russia. And so I think Putin is playing him like a fiddle. He's can charm his way to whatever ends. We'll see. But certainly Trump admires Putin. He wishes he could be more like Putin. But I'm not surprised. And again, this is a longer term deal than any of us would like it to be.
Sir, I really appreciate from our viewers, from our panelists, from our management, from this show, Professor Scott Lakeman, very famous American activist and chairman of different groups. I appreciate your time and contribution to this show. I also appreciate our geopolitical correspondent and White House correspondent Norman for your valuable insights. You have done very well today. We'll see you soon, sir, again. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very
sir,
much.
Before I go to the break, I just want to take one take from you, sir, General. This is the difference between a KGB guy turns into politician, president, and a businessman turns into politician and a president.
You see, Putin is a veteran. He had been through this for almost 40 years. Look back at his career. And in that sense, Trump is a new entrant in the game of politics, and especially the world politics. Putin plays his cards very carefully, very carefully, and all calculated. Putin's actions, Putin's deliberations are calculated, and they ensure that they get very positive result. Now, Trump has been sort of, there have been knee-jerk actions by Trump at times, and he thought that probably just because the USA is the #1 military power, will be able to push through everything, and as he could get the commitment from NATO to increase their defense expenditure, so probably that he thought that he will be able to bulldoze his way through the Ukraine war. But
Right,
that's
sir,
not the case.
Once a commander, always a commander. Commander walks like commander, commander talks like commander. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go for a short break. We have received two breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. An earthquake with its approximately 90 kilometers southeast from Sandpoint, Alaska. Not yet casualties news has come. And on the other side, a residential explosion in North St. Louis country. No details is coming yet. We will be letting you know if we get the any more further information. Sir, I wanted to say that whenever I don't understand anything as an anchor or as a journalist, I go to professor. The smallest question I am going to frame to you: who is going to stop Benjamin Netanyahu, so-called butcher or called butcher in Middle East?
I can give you the smallest answer too. It's God Almighty. He doesn't seem to care about any common sense, rationality, or any human being. Somehow, most all American presidents, including Trump, have been more interested to appease Netanyahu. He really restrains himself for a while, and then his nature evolves. But what he is doing, in fact, the death of a journalist implies, if any country can, I would believe it can be Iran. This is a nation which has tremendous fortitude. It has the weapons potential. It has excellent ties with China and Russia, and the experience of the last war has enriched Iran's capacity to absorb shocks and hit back. So I would say, if Netanyahu is asking for another war with Iran, it even could lead to the eventual end of Israel. And Iran would be not only using hypersonic weapons, it could even turn towards some other option if it comes to a question of survival, and its back is against the wall.
Right, sir. As you mentioned about the Iran sanctions deadline, there is a deadline for sanctions. Diplomatic talks underway. Diplomats from Britain, France, and Germany, also known as E3, are meeting with Iranian counterparts in Geneva for last-minute negotiation. The goal: avoid reimposing sanctions via the snapback mechanism ahead of a looming deadline. From a military perspective, how do you see this E3 negotiation meeting?
See, there mainly there are two aspects if you look into it. One, the sanctions that they are posing on Iran, it is hurting Iran, no doubt, but it is helping Iran to be a sort of a big power, because slowly and gradually Iran is developing itself to the extent that they will probably not have to look to anybody else. Iranians, mind you, one thing, it is civilization, it is not a country. So when you are dealing with a civilization, you have to be very, very careful. Iranians are a nation who have never been under subjugation. So you are trying to deal with the people who are very proud nation, very energetic, and very patriot. So when you are dealing with them, it is very difficult to break their will to fight or break their.
Sir, you says dealing with Iran is difficult because this is not a country; it is a nation, or it is a civilization. So among the civilization, unity is very powerful. I just want to quote one line from Khamenei, the supreme leader. He said, "Lion keeps itself silent even before go to the hunting." What is the meaning you find between these two lines? Because we see the generals are silent, Khamenei itself silent, President Masoud Pezeshkian is silent, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is silent. How do you see what could be the next reaction from Iran?
Thank you so much. And of course, I was listening to General Shafat sir's answer, and of course, today they are known as Iranians, but before in history they are also known as the Persians, and they've never been under anyone's rule. And of course, giving them sanctions, imposing sanctions under them would only motivate them towards self-reliance, towards depending on each other. We know because of the coverage of the Iran war with Israel, it would be the first notion where Tel Aviv was attacked in Israel, and that simple example was set in the world stage by Iran. Of course, I've been to Tehran and I've seen that they are quite so advanced in their civilization. And not only so, the entire world was at a crossroads in not allowing Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon. I don't see what's the problem with them acquiring a nuclear weapon, especially as Pakistan and other nations, Muslim nations, are nuclear powered nations as well. So that was the basis, and that is how Israel had attacked Iran, and Iran also retaliated. And once again, the common problem was the United States.
I want to do a quote from a person who is just with us right this moment. We are so proud. He said Bangladesh should try for atomic nation. Professor Shahiduzzaman, I want to take your attention in this moment. Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan and Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar has visited Bangladesh, signed 7 MOUs. What's the outcome you personally feel, because you have deep study on this and you are very vocal, the relationship between Pakistan and Bangladesh?
Well, I'm very optimistic, and I'm certain, inshallah, the pace has been set for very close ties between whatever we have seen in terms of the civilian relationship, cultural, educational, all of it. But the real relationship is going to be in terms of how Pakistan can help us get rid of the Indian espionage system within Bangladesh. I have always been writing on it that the ISI has to play an active role. I have even spoken to Pakistani Foreign Office and military people located in Islamabad that they have to be more aggressive, they have to come over. In the past, they were mostly complaining that we don't have get a visa, it takes such a long time. You know, your attitude. These problems are now over. The military people in Pakistan, the bureaucrats can simply take a plane, fly down to Dhaka, and there are no restraints. This is absolutely essential, and that leaves me optimistic. I just hope.
I'm sure General Shapat is taking preparations to have to put his arguments on this.
See, it's not what Pakistan can give us. It's for us to decide how much help we can want from Pakistan. Because we as a nation are divided. We cannot decide what is our national interest. If we can decide as a nation that this is our national interest, we can move on that. But as long as you have this division, we will not be able to really achieve much.
I totally agree with General Shafat and Professor Shahiduzzaman. Both of them are my very favorite. I really follow both of you's comments, remarks and write-ups on the newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the heat of the show, but production team, producer Imrul is pushing me to go for a short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin with Professor M. Shahiduzzaman sir. David Miliband, former Foreign Minister, Foreign Secretary of United Kingdom, has says that Bangladesh, Sudan, Ukraine, Syria are facing huge crisis on refugees. Bangladesh is one of the notable countries. What do you suggest to resolve this problem?
I think David Miliband is an excellent spokesperson. He's a learned man and he's well ahead of his age in dealing with international crisis. It's very appropriate that he has included Bangladeshi Rohingyas as a part of his identification of the major crisis, refugee crisis today. I have always felt that we always try to expect the international media, international sources, the UN and the big powers to solve it for us. But there is really nothing they can do except for providing aid, because this is a military crisis, and I hope Brigadier Shah will agree that no one knows when this insurgency in Myanmar will end. And if we are going to keep on waiting until peace comes back, we will never be able to send the Rohingyas. I always have believed that we should invite the coercive option, that is, this is a new generation of Rohingyas who now want to fight out and liberate their lands. They know that it's useless to rely on any outside sources, and they are only being used indefinitely by the international media. But we have done very little to develop a Rohingya army, Rohingya capability, because Arakan army never understands anything than the language of force. Even
Right, sir.
the Myanmar government in the center has no control over the Arakan army. So, and for a while it seemed that the Arakan army would come to an accommodation. It seemed like our representative Dr. Khalil would be able to make the Arakan army recognize that if they want to have any international recognition,
Right, sir.
they have to abide by the UN decision to accept the Rohingyas and give them. But it doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
The Rakhines are very racist, and they simply refuse to recognize
Sir,
the status
Professor
of
Shahiduzzaman
Arakan.
is really disappointed on this particular handling. What about you?
I'll ask you a question. This is the third exodus. First took place in 78, second in 92-93. In the first one, I was a commanding officer, and we are asked to move to Teknaf area.
Sir, I know you are doing a lot of work on this, and you have vast experience on Rohingya issues. We will definitely make one special edition on this particular issue, because Bangladesh is facing a lot of trouble. World is endorsing Rohingyas to stay here, but Bangladesh is not capable to host such a number of Rohingyas right this
let me
moment.
finish what I was saying. This Bangladesh succeeded in repatriating in 78. 92-93, again Bangladesh succeeded. Why Bangladesh failed in 2017?
Yes, sir.
Have we analyzed?
Yeah, we also have a lot of questions to you. We will make one special edition on this particular, and Professor Shahiduzzaman also will be there, because he has a lot of speeches on this particular. Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out very fast. We have to conclude, but before, wishing happy birthday to Mother Teresa, who was a Nobel Peace Prize winning Catholic nun and humanitarian who founded the missionaries of charity. Her legacy endures worldwide. We will see you tomorrow.